An ancient Persian king standing in an ancient fortress, watching the battlefield in the Strait of Hormuz. Here you see what has never been told until now.
Sometime today, inside a 30-mile stretch of water, a single tactical miscalculation could crash the global economy. This is the Strait of Hormuz. Western naval fleets patrolled this sickle-shaped corridor. We are talking about 100,000-ton American nuclear supercarriers and guided missile destroyers operating on a razor's edge. They are locked in a permanent, high-stakes standoff against Iranian fast attack boats and hybrid electronic warfare systems that constantly test the limits of these waters. Modern political analysts often overlook the underlying physical reality. These warships operate within the constraints of a specific geological anomaly, a physical vice that has determined the strategic value of this coordinate for thousands of years. If you fly a drone over these contested waters, the landscape looks completely alien. Salt diapirs pierce the surface as jagged, multicolored islands. These prehistoric salt columns behave like fluid plastic under extreme tectonic weight, tearing through the upper layers of rock to reach the open air. Hormuz Island contains deposits of 500-million-year-old iron-rich hematite. When the waves crash against the shoreline, this mineral-rich soil turns the surf a terrifying, brilliant scarlet. Understanding why this narrow vice exists requires a radical shift in perspective. We have to mentally drain every drop of ocean water out of the Persian Gulf. 70,000 years ago, the waters of the Indian Ocean were absent from this basin. In their place stood a vast terrestrial highway, a lush valley that provided a primary corridor for early human migration. Over 20 million years ago, magma split the Earth's crust, breaking Arabia from Africa. This slow-motion continental battering ram migrated northeast. When that colossal plate slammed into the Eurasian shield, the kinetic energy violently crushed the ancient ocean floor upward into the sky. Those compressed, jagged peaks formed the Zagros Mountains, an impenetrable wall of rock running along the western spine of Iran. As the mountains rose, a sunken geological trough was left behind. At the exact coordinate where the Arabian plate made its sharpest turn against the Iranian landmass, the space narrowed into a thin bottleneck. Millions of years before humans existed to fight over it, the tectonic movement of the Earth had mechanically engineered an inescapable maritime vice. During the peak of the last ice age, global sea levels were 120 meters lower than they are today. Huge quantities of the planet's water were locked away in massive continental glaciers. This drop in sea level completely dried out the Persian Gulf. The seabed became a massive, hyper-fertile basin fed by the merging Tigris, Euphrates, and Karun rivers. Early hunter-gatherers used this Persian Gulf oasis as a vital refuge from the surrounding hyper-arid deserts. For thousands of years, the basin supported diverse wildlife and human communities. Early humans walked past these salt diapirs and limestone crags as dryland features, using them as massive landmarks while moving through the valley. This creates a profound irony. The coordinate we now monitor as a gateway for global war was once a critical sanctuary that ensured human survival. 12,000 years ago, the global climate shifted. The massive ice sheets began to melt at a catastrophic velocity. The Indian Ocean breached the outer ridges of the Gulf. A huge volume of water roared through the canyon at Hormuz, with enough force to submerge the entire valley. Millions of square miles of the fertile basin were swallowed in a matter of weeks. The surviving populations were forced to flee toward the high cliffs of the Iranian plateau and the mountains of Oman. This catastrophic flood permanently submerged the valley, transforming a prehistoric cradle into a volatile sea corridor. When those floodwaters finally stabilized, they left behind the exact maritime bottleneck we see on maps today. The naval fleets currently patrolling the Gulf are sailing directly over the drowned footsteps of their prehistoric ancestors. The crimson hematite leaching into the surf from the salt domes acts as a permanent signature of the volcanic and tectonic forces that redefined this geography. The superpower standoff at the Strait of Hormuz is essentially a modern apologue. It is a high-tech conflict being played out over the ruins of a lost human paradise. Imagine you want to control the wealth of an entire continent. You could raise a massive army, march across thousands of miles, and try to conquer every acre of land. Or you could just find the continent's only driveway and build a toll booth. That toll booth is the Strait of Hormuz. It is the real-world example of how a geographical bottleneck concentrates political and economic power. The importance of this water gate comes entirely from its unyielding geometry. The ocean here narrows into a 30-mile sickle, physically forcing a massive percentage of global maritime trade to squeeze through a single unavoidable vice. In this environment, managing 30 miles of ocean grants a level of influence over global trade that no amount of inland territory can match. During the Middle Ages, the Kingdom of Ormus set up shop directly inside this strait. They built their capital on a hypersaline rock that had zero agriculture, toxic soil, and no fresh water. Yet, they became the wealthiest coordinate in Asia. The kings of Ormus operated on a specific economic equation. If you have zero natural resources, but 100% control over the flow of trade, you generate immense wealth. They turned their barren island into a secure, tax-free clearinghouse. If a merchant ship was moving Chinese silk, Indian black pepper, or Arabian pearls, it had to drop anchor right here. Ormus proved that in a strict choke point, commanding network logistics is far more lucrative than physically owning vast stretches of agricultural land. That concentration of wealth eventually attracted a new predator. In 1507, heavy, black-hulled Portuguese galleons arrived, commanded by Admiral Afonso de Albuquerque. Looking at the map, Albuquerque recognized a tactical shortcut. Instead of launching a land invasion against the heavily defended Iranian mainland to take the region, he targeted the island's single logistical weakness. He anchored his galleons around Hormuz and cut off the daily barges carrying fresh drinking water from the mainland. The siege worked instantly. The merchant elite surrendered to dehydration within days, and the Portuguese cemented their victory by constructing a massive stone fortress right on the shoreline. While a choke point concentrates wealth, its total reliance on outside logistics makes it vulnerable to a surgical naval blockade. Today, the wooden galleons are gone, but the same geographical math governs the 2026 standoff between the United States and Iran. In the open ocean, a 100,000-ton American nuclear aircraft carrier relies on its speed and maneuverability. But inside this tight, shallow 30-mile vice, that size becomes a tactical liability. If you are the defending force looking at that lumbering ship trapped in a narrow channel, what specific, low-cost weapons do you use to exploit the terrain? You engineer an asymmetric shield. Iran lines the jagged coastal mountains with thousands of hidden anti-ship cruise missiles, seeds the water with stealth sea mines, and prepares low-cost kamikaze drone swarms. In a space this tight, the defending force doesn't need to defeat a superpower fleet in open combat. They just need to make the narrow passage too hazardous to enter. In 2026, the potential for a localized naval incident is inseparable from the stability of the global economy. This chart shows the volume of global energy supply pipelines. If the Strait of Hormuz closes today, over 20% of the world's daily liquefied natural gas and petroleum is severed from the market. That drop in supply would lead to blackouts in Asian megacities, paralyze European industrial centers, and pull global financial markets into a tailspin. From the medieval era to the present, the strategic formula is clear. Ormus prioritized the flow of trade over land, Portugal weaponized logistics against geography, and modern asymmetric tactics now challenge the traditional dominance of the blue water fleet. Empires rise and weapons evolve, but this single tectonic scar carved into the earth millions of years ago remains the throat of the world.